Welcome to the Soulfull Sound Podcast. This podcast is about celebrating the leaders, teachers, and coaches who guide fellow humans to connect, heal, and discover themselves so they can express their gifts into the world. I am Simone Niles, a coach, sound healer, vocalist, and author. Thank you for being here with me today. In this Soulfull Sound conversation, I am joined by the beautiful Michelle Escoffery, who is an award-winning British singer, songwriter, and vocal producer, having consistently amassed accolades as one of the UK's most respected songwriters. Michelle's metaphoric journey has been one of internal exploration and experience. Coached by her father in her early years, Michelle has been heavily involved in every element of songwriting, singing, directing, producing, and vocal coaching, and continues to do so to this day. A multi-hyphenate, Michelle is also a qualified life coach with almost 2 decades of experience. She supports makers and professionals to find constructive stillness in life's chaos, to balance creativity with the demands of daily life so they can increase the energy we all need to avoid burnout. In this episode, Michelle speaks about her musical journey and her expansion into life coaching. She talks about the importance of taking responsibility for your own healing and opens up about her own personal healing journey. We delve into visions, spirit, and thoughts on life and death as we explore past experiences. Join us for this deep conversation. Hello. I am so excited to be joined today by the wonderful Michelle Escoffery, who is a holistic coach, and she offers a journey that is spirit-led, bespoke life crafting, tailored to the individual, balancing the ebb and flow, bringing the sacred, professional, and real you into alignment. That is so delicious. I love that. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Oh, lovely. So could you tell me a little bit more about that? That's such wonderful. I just love what you're saying there, especially that alignment piece, because I work a lot within that alignment piece myself. What is balancing the ebb and flow? And tell me a little bit more about what that means.
Balancing the ebb and flow. So we all go through periods in life where we are up, we're down, things are flowing and then things aren't flowing, things are busy and then things are still. And it's balancing that and balancing the work-life balance, the spiritual, the emotional, the mental, bringing it all together into alignment and working with that on a daily basis.
Beautiful. And so what type of things do you do with clients to help them actually go through that balancing process?
We go through lots of different things. A lot of what I do is about listening and just asking powerful questions and really getting clients to own their own journey and own their own healing and own their own discovery in terms of what their spiritual practice is, how they are working with spirit, how they are working with themselves, self-discovery, self-evaluation, and taking real ownership for their own healing and their own journey. A lot of the time, I think we go through life and we're very external and we validate ourselves by external forces. And the work that I do with my clients is about bringing that internally and figuring out what really works for us and, what we're rubbing up against and what our expectations are or what our conditioning has been, and starting to break through some of those barriers and really get to the real essence of who we are and live in that space.
That's beautiful. I love that. I mean, I talk a lot about authenticity, and I kind of explain it in my own words as a revolving door between the inner and outer world.
That's right.
So it's that constantly going inward and then expressing outward.
Absolutely.
Because we know it's not static, isn't it? It's not like, okay, I found myself, so now
and that's it.
Life's great now. There is definitely that dance between the inner and outer parts.
Absolutely.
And I love that you are, you're really talking about ownership, because I think a lot of the things that happen when you talk about healing or you say I'm a healer, it's often there's this stigma attached that I come to you for something and you heal me. When really and truly, healers are catalysts, and we help to guide people back to the space within themselves where healing can take place.
That's
I absolutely love that you've really highlighted that ownership piece, because I think it's often something that is not said or left out, and it's so important.
It's 100% important. For me, it's the only way. It's the only way to really have authentic healing, and really to get to know yourself and get to the grips of who am I? Who am I really?
Yes.
You can only do that through owning that space.
And what would you say is your definition of healing?
I think it is about shining a light on things that maybe aren't working, on the conditioning that we've been through, and bringing things into alignment, and being able to look at something and say, actually, that really hurt, or this is still hurting, and working through it. Working through the trauma, or through the problem, or through the blockage to get to the other side of it. That's really what I feel like healing is. It's like you said, it's continuous work, and it's a continuous journey. I was with a client last night, and we were talking about, it takes years of conditioning or suppressing or hiding from something. So when you actually get to the space where you're like, oh, I'm ready to face this, it's not going to disappear straight away. You're going to be peeling back those layers and working through that, and then coming through the other side and looking at yourself and saying, oh, I'm different now. And what is different about me? And what am I willing to take forward? And what do I need to let go of? And actually be okay with that, and be okay with leaving things behind that no longer serve. And I think for me, that's really what healing is about. It's about that balancing of, this serves me, this doesn't. This hurt, and this is what I've learned from that, or this is where I am right now, and it's okay for me to be here right now. I think that's really my definition of healing.
That's lovely. And I love that you're talking about going through it, because it's not something that we can avoid. We have to go through.
And we do try.
We do try, don't we? Yeah, we have to go through it, literally just dive in, and really just look at those pieces that you've mentioned, so beautifully outlined. And I mean, healing really is self-paced as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It isn't
different.
Rush.
It looks different for everyone, and it feels different for everybody too.
It does. Oh, that's so wonderful. And what about you and your healing journey? Is there anything that you would like to share about the healing that you are going through or have gone through, so that we can, pick some beautiful gems out of that process?
It's never ending.
Of course.
I think, like you said, I think sometimes we think we're going to arrive somewhere, that there's somewhere to be, and we get there and we're like, right, I'm healed. That's it. I've arrived. And it just doesn't work that way. There's always things happening, and there's things that we acknowledge and things that we don't, things that happen, in the unconscious or subconscious, and things that are very conscious.
Yes.
I think for me, gosh, when did my healing start? I don't know. I know that my spiritual journey, I feel like I've always been on a journey, and there's things that I've been aware of, and then things that came to my awareness.
Sure.
So when I was a little girl, I was very aware that I would pray a lot. I was very aware that there were other spirits around, but I didn't necessarily recognize them as spirits. I would see things and be like, oh, I saw this in the mirror, what does that mean? And my mum would freak out and be like, you're never going to a funeral ever again because you see spirits, things like that. But it was only when my sister passed away that I think I came face to face with spirit. And it was the first experience I had was that I actually was in a writing session, and it was an eclipse, and I went into trance, and I didn't know anything about trance or anything like that. And the people around me in the session said, you went into this trance and you was asking all these questions about life and the afterlife and what happens to your spirit and what happens to your soul, etc. I have no recollection to this day. I have absolutely no recollection of that experience whatsoever. Right. And I came home and I told my sisters, and one of my sisters was like, you need to start meditating. So I was like, okay, I'll try this meditation thing.
Right.
So I started meditating. On my first meditation, I had a vision. And the vision was I was by the seafront with my sisters and we were dressed in white. But my other sister, who was at the time she was alive, she wasn't with us.
Right.
And she was in a garden with my grandparents. And it really bothered me. And I was beckoning for her to come over and she was refusing to come. And it really bothered me because I'm like, my grandparents have passed on. Why is my sister there? And why won't she come over to us? And it just frightened me. And about 4 weeks later, she passed away.
Right.
And that is what began my journey into seeking and trying to find out more about spirit and what does it mean, and when you see things like this, what does that mean? And it's just led me on. It's been a very beautiful journey, but sometimes it's been very scary as well. And you know, you open up and you think, oh no, don't want to know all of that. You close back up again. And it's been, spirit is beautiful. And connecting and communing with spirit has been beautiful. And I think it's really helped along the way for me in terms of understanding that death is a transition. It's not a full stop. And being able to communicate with your ancestors and communicate with spirit in a way that is enriching has really been something that's fortified my journey, I think.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you for being so open about something so personal. I'm sure, as we know, the grieving process is not an easy thing. As you say, that healing that goes, it's continuous.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I would like to say that, you know, in situations where, like you said, you could start to notice and see, and the door is opening, and then there's this, oh, hang on, what's going on?
Yeah.
I remembered actually having a conversation recently with one of my sound healing teachers. I think actually her podcast is out today, her episode, but we were talking about intuition and talking about that in those messages that often come through. And I remember for myself, just to kind of touch on that, opening the door, closing the door that you referred to, that sometimes when things came up and it just kind of bubbled up, you know, it was that moment where the internal dialogue might pop up and you have those self-doubts.
Right.
Is this really happening?
Yeah.
Hang on, what's going on, you know? And I realized what often helped me through it was just a very simple reframe.
Yeah.
Which was, well, what if it is?
Yeah.
And just realizing that anything that does come up is just information.
Right.
You can do something with it or not.
Yeah.
It's just information. And I found from my own personal journey in delving deeper into my spirituality and understanding energy and healing in a deeper way, that it was such a profound shift. Just like, but what if it is?
Yeah.
And there's an element of trust and faith in that obviously, you know, you develop and you hone over time.
Yes. I'm glad you said over time.
Yes, you hone over time. And I think it's wonderful. But I know that we have a lot in common. And I'm really curious about your musical journey because we both have a background in music and singing and vocalizing. Yeah. And so tell me about your journey, your musical journey.
Oh, gosh. So I come from a singing family. And I started singing maybe around 7, I would say. So my sisters are quite a bit older than me. There's quite a gap. So I was always the little one wanting to be involved and wanting to get involved. My dad taught us all how to sing.
Nice.
So he'd bang out keys on the piano and be do, 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 do. You sing this, you sing that, you sing that. And we'd all sing in harmony.
Yes.
And then I went semi-professional at 9 with my sisters. So singing in church, in banquets, weddings, etc. And then at 16, we got signed to an American label called Atlantic Records.
Right, yes.
And I was just finished school, going and doing my A-levels and recording an album at night and trying to finish doing, you know, coursework and stuff. It didn't work out, but music worked out.
Beautiful.
So we went to the States and we, you know, did stuff out there and came back. We worked with the Ethnic Boys, which was Marcus Johnson and Steve Campbell. And it was an amazing experience recording, live instrumentation in the studio. And my sister, Sandra, she was the main songwriter for the group.
Nice.
And at the end of the project, she had 2 more songs to write. And she locked me in her room. She locked me in her bedroom. Literally, and said, "You're not leaving until you help me to write these songs."
Beautiful.
And that's kind of how my songwriting journey started, because I protested and said, "I don't write songs, no. And she was like, "You're going to help me write these songs.
And you're not leaving.
Until they're done."
Well done.
And we were there a good few hours. But both songs made the album.
Brilliant.
So for me, that was such a affirmation that, you can do this.
Yes.
And then I started writing and sending stuff to Marcus Johnson, he was kind of, I guess, one of my mentors in a way as a producer. What do you think of this? Is this good enough? Da, 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 da. And I actually wrote a song for rhythm and bass, which Ali Tennant and Wayne Hector were in.
Love that.
Called Blame It on the Rain, which made the album. And and I just kept writing songs. And first of all, I was writing ballads, and then it was like, no, you need to write more up-tempo stuff. And I struggled with that and kind of wrote mid-tempos, and then moved on to just writing choruses for up-tempos, and eventually kind of honed that skill to write more up-tempo songs as well.
Yeah.
And then I joined a girl group, Truce.
Nice.
Which was a crazy adventure. And we were signed to Big Life Records, and we traveled, we toured and did loads of things, and it was amazing. And then I kind of decided I didn't want to live out of a suitcase anymore.
Yeah.
So that's when pretty gruesome.
Yeah.
So I signed to EMI Music Publishing and was with them for 9 years.
Yeah, and I know that you've written for quite a few interesting people as well.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been a journey. It's I guess the one that really stands out for me is Tina Turner. Wrote for her back in, I think, 2005.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, and that was
wonderful.
And the story was that we wrote the song and we was like, this would be amazing for Tina Turner. And we sent it through to her management, etc. And they said, Tina's actually retiring. This is her last tour. And we're like, no. And then about a year or 2 later, she decided she was going to do one more world tour and do a greatest hits album. And she actually sent her own personal message saying, I love the song. I really want to perform this song.
That's beautiful.
And she flew in and she did it in like one take.
Right.
And I'm really privileged to have my BV still on the track.
Nice.
And that for me was massive. It was like Tina Turner.
Well, of course.
Yes.
I mean, legend right there.
Absolutely.
Right?
And then I had the number one with, it was actually before that, with Liberty X, who were on the show. I think it was Pop Stars they were on before it became Pop Idol and then X Factor.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And that again was a great experience. And John and George Hammond Hagen, who were also in rhythm and bass, I wrote that song with them. So the dots, links. The connections have been going right through my journey. It's been great.
That's amazing. That's awesome. And what I'd be interested in now in reflection, because, you spoke at the beginning about that kind of balancing the ebb and flow of life. So thinking now, what would you have said to your younger self, the touring musician, the one who was going through all of that up and down as you do in the music industry?
Yeah.
What advice would you have given your younger self, which perhaps anyone, young creatives who are up and coming now could pull from?
It's okay to say no. It's okay to take some time out. It's, we're led to believe that things are going to run away from you. Yes. And it's funny, it was something I was telling a friend yesterday, was one thing that my mum used to always say to me is, "Wa feel can't unfeel." And it's like, huh? When you're young, you're like, what? But it's true. It's like what is for you cannot not be for you. It's not going to pass you by. Yes. So you taking a break or taking time to say, you know what, actually, I don't want to go out tonight. I know it's a networking thing, but I'm tired. I need to rest. It's okay to do that. And actually doing that and getting the rest and being able to replenish and restore yourself gives you that extra juice to do what you need to do out in the world.
Yeah, and I think really honoring yourselves is so important. You know, it builds a great relationship with self, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which then can ripple out in so many beautiful ways. It's very interesting because not long ago I recorded a short podcast episode for my coaching.
Yeah.
And one of the sayings that I spoke about, which was passed down from my parents, and my mum used to say to us all the time is, if it's for you, it's for you.
Yeah.
If it's not for you, thank God and move on.
Yes.
And so that's exactly
your
I love the Jamaican slang version, but it's pretty much the same essence, right?
Absolutely,
it's like, if it's for you, it's for you. So it's fine.
Yeah.
You know, that's
there's
beautiful.
no need to stress about it.
Yeah. Because we can sometimes stress about so much. It's just the stories that we tell ourselves about what something means or doesn't mean, or as you say, those external expectations. This is what they expect me to do as a musician, and how dare I say no to a music exec or to an agent or whatever. But actually, you are setting the tone for your career as you build those blocks.
Yep.
And I think then there is obviously that really fine line where we have to make sure that we're saying we're honoring ourselves, but we're also not turning down opportunities based on fear or those things as well.
Yeah.
So we have to find that line between the two.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it is that thing of not holding yourself back through self-sabotage or through fear, but also knowing when to look after yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that in the music industry, there's such a disparity between those two things. We're not encouraged to look after ourselves. I think it's changing now, especially with such an emphasis now on mental health and mental wellness.
Yes.
I can see things, shifting, but still there is this pressure of I have to perform, I have to be on form all the time. And that's impossible. It's actually not possible to be on form 100% of the time. You need to recover. You need time for rest and recovery. And I would like to see an industry where those things are taken into consideration and worked into your plan.
Yeah.
That's what I would love to see.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it hurts my heart to hear the stories of vocalists who, when they're losing their voice or things aren't growing really well, where the first thing is, all right, let's get some steroid injections in there first. Yeah. Let's see if we can get you back up and running, even though, tomorrow you might collapse. But, I find it's really heartbreaking. And I think that you're right that there's some shifts. I don't know enough about how much shifting there is going on simply because I'm not in the industry in the same way that I used to be. But also I was always in a space where I could look after myself. I'd go and do a lot of session work, do a lot of backing vocals for people, work with other songwriters, and a lot of coaching. Yeah. So there was an element of honoring myself, I think, a lot in that journey.
Yes.
As I wasn't at the level of, going out there and touring that you were. So it takes a very different state of mind and definitely looking after yourself, your well-being, mentally, physically,
I do think there has to be an element of resilience and self-knowing. I know for myself, there were times where I would want to take breaks and they would literally say to me, oh, this is professional suicide. You can't not do this. You have to turn up for this thing. And I'm like, well,
I'm going to die then.
Exactly, right? I was like, well, so and it was a problem at the time. It was a problem, and I even to cut down working days. I remember a big thing for me was I cannot work 7 days a week. This is crazy. Yeah. So I would like to work, I think at the time I wanted to work like 4 days a week. And it was a massive uproar. This is crazy. You can't do that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I can.
Yes.
And I will, because actually I'm going to be a lot more productive having had time either side to just rest or do something different or go and people watch or do something other than just be in the studio not seeing the light of day for weeks on end. It's which is often what happens. You forget what time of day it is, right? Totally.
I think it's great that you have lived that, because I'm sure that working with your clients in all the wonderful ways that you do now, it's really like, I know what it's like to go through those moments where you can choose to be, to really put yourself through the ringer and not rest and not look after yourself. I had those moments. Sometimes I didn't do it, but most of the time I was able to go, hang on, this isn't working. And I think it's wonderful that you've lived it, because it's nothing like having skin in the game, when you're working with people and moving forward. So talk to me more about now your coaching journey, because we have something similar in that we've both started in music and we've evolved, even though we're still within the music, we've evolved into coaching and healing. I want to know more about that part of your journey.
Well, I think that's how it kind of came about, because of the burnout and feeling that, and also seeing others around me crashing and burning, and saying there's got to be a better way than this. We must be able to support ourselves in a better way than this. And why are we not speaking about this? This is not okay. So for me, that journey kind of rose out of that, and rose out of feeling like, what do I do now? When I left Truce, when I left the girl group and said, I can't do this anymore, I went for a period where it was like, who am I? Am I even worthy? What do I do now? What does my career even look like now? And feeling really incapable of, excelling outside of that, because that had become my identity. So being able to navigate that and figure out, okay, actually, yes, I want to write songs. This is what I want to do for, my career now, and be in that space and navigate, people thinking, well, no, that's not what you should be doing. You should be doing this or that. Made me really look at, okay, how can I support other people that are going through this? And particularly going through a crossroads where either what I was coming up against were specifically women who were it was either one way or another. It was either I've dedicated my life to my profession, and now I'm looking around going, oh, actually, what do I want? Who am I outside of this profession? And how do I identify myself, and how do I show up in the world if I'm not that? So there was that aspect of it. And then there was also the other aspect of, I've dedicated my life to my family. I've raised these children. Now I want to identify who I am and what do I like, and how do I want to feel outside of being, a mother, a wife, or a partner, or all of those things. So that's kind of where I started shifting into. And how I came into it was I started holding sister circles.
Nice.
So for me, when my sister passed away, I was really aware that she was my sounding board, and she was that person that I went to and, sounded off on, oh, this isn't fair, this is happening, and blah, blah, blah. And then that was suddenly gone. Right. So for me, it was, okay, how do I create safe spaces for particularly women to be in, that they can just talk and they can say whatever they want to say, and it's okay for them to do that, and they're held and they're supported, and they're fed in a way, something's fed back to them. They're given tools to maybe deal with the situations that they're in. And that's kind of how it started for me. And then through doing that, I was like, okay, I need to learn more. I need to train. I need to do all these other things as well. So I started going through that process as well. And that was like 2000. 2000, I started that journey onwards.
Beautiful. And so I'm curious, as a coach myself, but also a mother of three, and, doing I've always worked for myself. I've built my own business, worked as a vocal coach and a singer and and the list goes on. I wonder what's some of the processes that you take your clients through who feel like they have connected to, whether it's their career or their familial, responsibilities as their identity. How do you get them to step outside of that and or balance all of them? Because in reality, you can have a career and be a mother and be this and that. And I say this because I'm just curious to know how you've helped people through it. I remember when I came from the age of 7, I knew I wanted to be a singer, and I pursued it ever since. My story is out there. I won't repeat it over and over again for so many, but the long story short is, this is what I was going to do. My heart heard the song. I responded, I sang, and this is what I was going to do. So when probably around the same time in 2000, year around 2099, I decided I wanted to add coaching and bring that element. I felt like I was cheating on music. I was like, what am I doing? This is my thing. How dare I step outside of the music and say I'm going to go coaching, which has nothing to do with the singing stuff. And then, of course, you do what you do as you evolve and you grow. And I've done all these different things. And interestingly, bringing the sound healing element into my work and the shamanic practices completely makes sense to me what my journey of sound was about as well.
Right.
So it was such a beautiful reflection for me. But yes, coming back to what do you then say to someone who says, well, look, this is what I am. This is how I've existed for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
How do you get back to that?
We challenge that and we look at who am I really?
Yeah.
So that's one of the fundamental questions I always ask. Who am I? As in getting them to ask themselves that.
Yes.
And once you get past the roles and, I'm a this, I'm a mother, I'm a blah, 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 I'm a da-da-da-da-da, which are things that you do. It's not really who you are. Then we dig deeper into who am I really? And a lot of the time, then things start to poke up and it's like, well, actually, I'm a this, or I want to be this, and we start to dig into that and we start looking at, okay, well, what does that look like? And what does that feel like? And if we were to extend that in, a year's time, 2 years' time, where would you be if you were that? And we really start to just strip things back. And for some people that hit walls, I just go to feeling. What do you want to feel like? What feels good to you? And then we build on that every day. And I think I go through that process because that's the process that I went through when I kind of hit a wall when my relationship ended with my daughter's father. And it was, oh my God, I'm a statistic now. I'm this single mother. I'm a black woman. And you kind of just beat yourself up and you're like, what do I do now? The only thing I knew to do was go back to feeling. Okay, so today, what can I do? What one thing can I do today that feels good? Regardless of what I'm supposed to be doing, what feels good? Okay, I'm going to go for a walk. Today, I'm going to have a bath today. I'm going to just sit here and just listen to my own thoughts and listen to what's going on outside and just see what pops up. And I started doing that daily and then started building on that. And before I knew it, I'd started to build a new identity for myself based on how I want to feel and how I want to navigate life in that realm rather than who I should be, who I think I should be. It's actually, well, who's showing up? And that's kind of what I work with clients.
Yeah, I think it's a really important element that you've injected there around the how do I want to show up today? What do I want to feel? What do I want to cultivate in my life right now? Because often, as you said, we come from this doing place. As you talk about the roles, this is what I do. This is how I exist. This is how I put myself out there. And we understand that that's a reflection of something deeper. But equally, who you are isn't just what you do.
Exactly.
And so coming in through joy and meaning is very important. And I work that way with clients. So it's really lovely to hear that that parallel, which is how do I want to show up today? Or what actually brings meaning and joy into my life? Let's start there.
And a lot of the time, like you said, we do it the other way round. Once I do this, and this, I can be happy. Once I've achieved this, and this, then I'll have joy. And it's absolutely not the case.
No.
So it's trying to flip that on its head. And look
Start
at
with
actually being. Exactly. Who do I want to be? How do I want to feel? And once I start to expand on that feeling of joy and that feeling of happiness, then I attract all these things anyway because I am that.
That's it. That's the energy. That's the frequency that you're giving off. And that's then what comes up into your life. I love that.
And what's meant for you comes to you because you are emanating this joy out into the world. So what is meant for you starts to attract itself to you. Because you're not now in a place of fear of this is what I should be doing.
There is so much caught up in the status quo and these expectations that we either place on ourselves or we
placed on us.
Or placed on us that we take on board.
Absolutely.
I left college. I was 17 and I was halfway through my A-levels, and this is back in the Caribbean in Barbados. And I said, I'm dying right now. My soul is dying. I cannot sit through another French sociology and English class. I was skipping everything to go into the auditorium and sing with my a cappella group back in the day, Legend, back in Barbados, which was my sister and my best friend. So we did the whole live, eat, breathe, sing music in the studio for 3 years, working at Eddie Grant's studio back in Barbados. It was a beautiful experience. Best training I've had to date, being on the ground and doing it. Having said that, I was again, like you, the college dropout where I was like, oh my gosh, am I now a statistic? Yeah. But I knew my soul was calling out to me and saying, this is not for you. Yeah. And I knew it wasn't for me. So I said, I got the courage up. I said to my parents, I'm dropping out of college. I want to do music. And my mom was like, well, as long as you have a plan in place and we can work through it, let's do it. And my dad was like, are you going to take this? Are you going to take this music thing seriously? And, you know, as soon as I decided to study music or do it formally, he was on board. But for him, it wasn't, my daughter's just not going to drop out of college and sing on the side, you know. Yeah. Completely understand. But he was so supportive after a little while. And so when I left college, literally 4 months later is when I walked into a room, random audition, and it was us doing some harmonies. I think we were singing on Vogue. Nice. And it was so lovely. And yeah, I started working with him. But if I hadn't left, if I hadn't,
that opportunity would not have presented itself.
Right. Then. And so that whole, this is the order in which you're supposed to do things, you know, grow up, go through college, then, you know, go to university, then perhaps you'll meet the man and you get married and then you have kids. And then of course you buy a house and there's this whole order of how things ought to be or should be, and these are inverted commas for those of you who aren't seeing me, should be done. But I so did it the other way around, which I embrace, love, and celebrate because life is not linear.
That's right. Absolutely.
It is so not linear. We put so much pressure and labels
on ourselves. And by this age, I should have done this. And I'll be here. No. And I think, you know, there comes a point where you start to let go and realize that there are certain things that, of course, you will be guiding in your own life. We need to design our own life. Absolutely.
But I personally feel that there is something greater and that there's divine will that, you know, we sometimes, there's this saying, which I'm sure you've heard, when we plan, God laughs. Yeah. Right? And I love that because sometimes you can plan something to the T, and I'm a planner, hands up. I like to plan and organize. Anyone who knows me well knows this about me. But it doesn't go according to plan all the time. And that's where that flexibility is so important. Yes. Just remaining flexible, and then we go back to honoring ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which comes from that connection, because we can't honor something that we don't even know.
Exactly. Right.
So connecting, such a beautiful thing. I think we have so much in common. I can't wait to learn more about you and your work. So what kind of obstacles have come up for you so far, and maybe one or two ways that you've overcome them? Anything that you'd like to share about that?
I think one of the obstacles for me, and I think I'm still working with it, is that I'm recognized as a singer-songwriter. So it's that transition into coaching is like, oh, you're a coach. I thought you were a singer. So it's that recognizing that people, as you said, people can do different things. Yes. It's not just linear, and it's like, well, this is it, and this is my career, and this is what I'm going to be for the rest of my life. It's finding that space, and I feel like I'm in that space now where I attract the people that are meant to come to me. But yeah, that's been a major obstacle for me, that people only associate me with one thing.
Yes.
And it's, you know, there's many more things that are under my belt.
Yeah, of course.
And yeah, so that's interesting. It's been, I guess, as well, because my life has been mostly music related. So everybody looks at music.
It's what they see. It's the evidence of what you've done so far that they see and such. But I think for me, just if it's any helpful for you in your reflection, I think my approach was very much, when I went through that process, just be there as much as you can. And ultimately, as you say, you start to attract it. Yeah. So I still do vocal coaching, and I love working with clients. But what has happened is it has somehow kind of morphed into this combination of things.
Singing
I can tell you most of my singing clients have had a sound healing. If not, they've had a coaching session, or because we know as well in as vocal coaches that very often, you know, it doesn't end up being a lot of singing. Sometimes people start singing and stuff comes up.
Yes.
It's so therapeutic. And so we support that.
Absolutely.
Vocal coaches in general, I honor you all. And then when you bring the coaching element in and you have those skills, there's so much that then happens.
I agree.
So often I feel like it's less, I feel now that I'm in this space that I think less about what people might see or approach me for, and more about what I start to attract and how things start to change.
Exactly. And also it's that thing of you put yourself in a box. Yeah. Because I think for me, I can be quite compartmentalized. So it's like, well, this is music, this is coaching, this is events, and they don't marry to each other.
Yes.
And one of the things, maybe about 2 years ago, I worked with an amazing coach. Her name is Jamila White. She's based in the States. And she said to me, why are you doing that? You know, you're everything. Of course. All of this is you. And music is medicine. Yes. And it really impacted me. And she was like, you do it all, and the thread runs through all of it. Yes. So embrace all of it and don't try to separate things. You know, have your page, your one page and your one website, but it's all there, and people can pick and choose whatever they want. Yes. And that really impacted me. And I was like, okay, I appreciate that, and I can kind of get that. So I've been integrating everything, and it feels so much better than trying to separate myself out and be like, well, this is what I do here, this is what I do there. You know, I teach also, this is what I do there. It's nicer to say this is an amalgamation of everything that I do. Yeah. And actually, this is what I have to offer. And if it resonates with you, great. And if it doesn't, great.
Yeah, because you want to bring all of you to the table.
Exactly, right? Really rather than little pieces of you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, there are going to be some instances, of course, you know, you're going to go into a songwriting session still and do your thing. Exactly. You're not necessarily going to pick up your shamanic drum and drum with the songwriters unless that's going to kind of get them into the groove and really bring them into a wonderful space of creativity. It can do. It can but, you know, the fact is you can do these things
you know how
separately,
to navigate that. Yeah.
But you encompass all of them. Exactly. So you're bringing all that is to the table, which is what I think is special, you know, that's kind of how you evolve and grow.
Yes, absolutely.
And to own it and celebrate it for sure. So you got a lot of different things going on right now. And I know that, like I said, our journeys are quite similar in music and then moving into coaching and healing modalities. What would you say, if you could just in this right now, in this moment, what would you say is your purpose right now in the world?
What would I say is my purpose? To be fully embodied, to shine a light out into the world, understanding that, you know, the Creator has given me these gifts, and that I am not separate from Spirit. I'm not separate from God. God is within all of us. And to be able to wake that up in other people, understanding that we all have a divine essence and that we all are connected to each other. And on some level, we are affecting each other by how we live our lives. I think that is my purpose.
That's beautiful. I love that, to ignite and awaken that in others as well. That's beautiful. And I think it's special when you see, you can recognize something deep within yourself, but you also can recognize your part in the service of it. Yeah. You know, I think that's really special. Yeah. And I commend you on that, because I know that you're doing that a lot through your work. We spoke a lot about that, balancing the ebb and the flow and things like that. Yeah. And so what kind of things do you do to keep yourself balanced now? What's your self-care? How do you look after yourself?
What do? I have a spiritual practice. I meditate. I do a lot of breath work, breathing. For me, the breath is everything. I spend a lot of time in nature, grounding and just being close to the earth and close to water as well. And yeah, that's kind of the fundaments of what I do. I I have a specific spiritual journey that I'm on at the moment. So I work with the Orishas and nature. It's a lot to do with nature and the natural forces. And the deities, so Oshun, Yamaya, Elegua, and all, so many, there's too many to name, Orishas, which are elements of the divine and elements of nature. So I walk that journey. But yeah, it's more about seeding what's inside and allowing that to come up and come out, and being in touching, how can I explain it? It's like touching source every day, touching base every day. So for me, that's really, really important, that as I'm moving through life, that I'm completely connected to spirit and moving through life in that way.
I love that, touching source every day. You know, we are that, but it's so interesting how often we feel so outside of that.
Absolutely.
Because of the nature of the way we live right now. The busyness, the going out to work, the 9 to 5 or not, or the kind of stuff that we do. It's so important to come back into that stillness and that silence. And I love, I don't know much about this particular spiritual practice, but I love the whole connection to nature is a really big thing for me as well. I love walking in the forest. I go often with my brother, and grounding and the meditation piece. It's just whatever anyone decides to do. I think whatever they do, whether you want to call it a ritual or just some consistent practice, whatever it might be, is so important for that consistency of coming back to self.
Absolutely.
I think it's something that I definitely, really work a lot with clients in that way too, because it's about being practical as well. We can go and do the inner work, but then we're then going out to live into the world. And so how do we then bring those, make those practices work for us out there? And I think it's great that you've spoken about that. Kind of balancing what's going on out there and then what's going on in here. It's important.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely.
And also
important.
It changes, sometimes meditation really, really works for you, and then sometimes it doesn't. And it's being able to allow that and know that, we change, we're constantly changing, and sometimes what works now might not work in the future, and something else will work. I just started yoga again, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm so tight. But I know that it's beneficial, but I haven't done it for so long. It wasn't fitting into my life at that time,
right?
And sometimes for me, when I can't get into the ritual of doing something every single day consistently, I go back to the breath, because it's like, let me take 10 breaths. Let me just, let me be still enough to take some deep breaths and just reconnect with myself and reconnect with, source, and be in that space. So sometimes that's all I can do, and it's being able to give yourself permission to know that things change, I'm changing, the world is changing, and sometimes navigating the world is huge, and I can do this one thing right now, and that's okay,
Yeah, and I also think, as you say, giving ourselves permission to choose what works for us. I was speaking with a group recently, and while I've been meditating, I guess from the age of 6, I would say, my mom taught us meditations. We used to go down to the beach, 6, 7, 8 years old, not wanting to get up at 5 a.m., but having to get up at 5 a.m. And, I'm so glad that was something that she really pushed us into.
Yeah.
But from young, we'd go down to the beach and have sunrise meditations, and it was a beautiful thing. So for me, meditation's been a part of my life. But in this group, and talking about rituals and talking about things that we do, what I loved was that for some people, it isn't, the things that we hear in the media now, yoga, meditation, and breath work, and those things. I'm not saying they're not important, because I do them. And they're important for me, and it's, it's a beautiful practice, whatever you decide. But for some people, it can be something as simple as just joyfully cooking a meal.
Exactly.
Or just sitting and quietly and reading a book, or whatever it is that brings you back into quiet, brings you back into self, brings you back into stillness. As you say, getting into nature, if it's just taking a walk out, whether it's with your dog or your kids or just by yourself, whatever it might be. I just think
or just
it's
taking
really,
a nap.
Right. Taking a nap. 20 minutes, please.
Yes.
But whatever it is, I just think it's really important for us to honor our own personal journey.
Absolutely.
And I like to put that out there because I think there is also a lot of stuff right now in the media and the expectations and in the wellness world that is like, if you don't do these things, then
you're not well.
You're not woke, or you don't look after yourself, or and I feel like it's
self-care. Like that's the new buzzword, right?
Right. And I do think it's important. So I kind of say that with very much to honor whatever people decide that's right for them is right for them. My only advice, of course, would be to do it consistently.
Yes.
And be flexible. Like you said, there are going to be points where you grow and evolve. There was a point where I was into yoga a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Especially because that's what my husband does. He's a yoga teacher and trains yoga teachers. So he's a movement teacher.
Oh, wow.
I don't often call him a yoga teacher anymore, but he's a movement teacher, and he has his own brand, and he teaches this. And so way back then I would be crawling into the classes and getting into it, but I haven't done yoga in years.
Me too.
It's been a long time, and it's okay that I'm not.
Exactly.
There is still that expectation of others who think, well, you must be great because your husband, he's a movement teacher. And I'm like, well, I don't see him singing on stage, but okay. He was a musician, though, a bassist.
Oh, nice.
So it's beautiful. But yeah, I think that those things are really important. So I have another question that I'm really curious about because I'm really I'm really feeling your heart right now, which is beautiful, Michelle. So thank you for being so open. And I love the flow that's happening. And I'm curious for you, as an entrepreneur, creative yourself, like if you could project 5 years into the future, like what would you want for yourself?
Yes.
How would you want to show up, to use your words, in 5 years?
Man, it's all about tropics.
All about the tropics.
It's all about the tropics.
That's not what I was expecting, but I love that.
About the tropics. I think, how would I like to show up? Yeah, definitely I want to be somewhere warm. That's the first thing, and close to the sea and nature and in that kind of space. Definitely I see that within the next 5 years or so. But also just having a dance with myself. I think having a dance with myself and having a dance with life. I feel like I'm on the edge of this great adventure and just giving myself permission to just go with the adventure.
Nice.
That's kind of where I am. And we're in this transitional period of really letting go and doing crazy stuff. Like we're packing our whole house up and just going traveling for a little while.
Oh, that's
and
beautiful.
It's like it's this dance with trusting that that's okay to do that, and knowing that we'll be absolutely fine. And then when we come back, we'll find somewhere to live that will be great for us,
Yeah.
And I want to do more of that. I want to do more of that stepping out in faith and just knowing that the universe has me and I'll be fine. And wherever we land will be the right place to land. I think that's where I see myself, and being able to facilitate a space or spaces for people to come and restore, replenish, and really get a sense of themselves. And sometimes I feel like we have to remove ourselves from our day-to-day lives, in quotes, to be able to do that, to get that reconnection. And I see myself doing more work like that in the years to come, being able to facilitate that for people to find that space where they can just, readjust and rebalance and reassess what's happening in their lives and reconnect, especially to the earth and to nature, and getting into that space of, okay, yeah, I can slow right down and that's okay.
Yeah.
And be in that space where when I do slow down, then I start to hear and I start to feel and I start to reconnect and I start to realign with where I need to be and the frequency that I need to be flowing at. That's kind of where I see myself in the next 5 years.
I love how how you expressed that, in that you didn't say in the next 5 years, I want to own my own or have my own. It really came back to what you spoke about before, which was all about how you want to feel, how you want to show up, who you want to be in your life in 5 years. And I think that's so beautiful that you've stayed on track with that essence of what you were speaking about before. And I commend you on daring greatly into something new, because that's a space that I'm playing in a lot more, daring something different, trying something new, putting myself out there in a greater way.
Yes.
And in order to do that, it definitely takes courage.
Absolutely, yeah.
Courage to take a leap of faith into something that you don't know. You know, and I know that I sometimes take for granted that because I moved around, I lived in America, then back in the Caribbean, and I've been in the UK now for a couple decades. I know what it's like to pick up and move.
Yeah.
I sometimes take for granted how hard that is to take steps for others, but also even in other instances in my life.
Yes.
And so I draw from that courage of knowing that life isn't static or linear, like we said, and movement is required.
Absolutely.
Movement is required for growth.
Yes.
And growth happens outside of our comfort zone. So the fact that you are willing to go, okay, I'm just going to pack up my house, hubby, let's go. Let's just go travel around and just see where life takes us. Let the current flow through us. And we know we'll land somewhere that we need to be. I think that's so beautiful. So I just want to honor that and commend the courage, because I know that it's not an easy step to take.
Yeah. And it is that thing. Sometimes we question ourselves, like, are we doing the right thing? Are we using really our minds here? But it's that thing of, you know, when you step out, the path appears. And that's really what we live by. It's like, you know, if you what's the thing that I always say? You know, the universe meets you where you're at. So you have to step forward to meet the universe. And that's kind of how we live. So we're stepping out knowing that the path will appear. Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's the faith. My mum used to talk about this story all the time, which I really enjoyed. When she was in the Caribbean, she'd use it as an analogy of shining your light and leading by example.
Yes.
And so she would talk about when she drive along some of the country roads in the Caribbean, and anyone from the Caribbean knows that when it's dark and those pitch black, but people are still walking on the side of the road where there are no pavements or sidewalks, pavements we say here. I never remember. And so you're walking, you're driving, and then what you do is you're driving and you've got your lights on. You see someone that they're on the side, but more importantly, they use the light that you're shining from your car to make a few more steps quickly, because then they can see their path a bit more clearly. And so she always used that analogy to say, lead by example, shine your light, and you'll help others along the way.
It's true.
And it's such a beautiful vision for me, because I can completely see that. Like, okay, let me move quickly. I have a little bit of light right now. And, you know, I think that it's really important to do that. And so, because I know that I could speak to you all day, we could continue. I definitely have, I want to ask you one more question, but before I do, I want to stop really for a brief moment and honor you and celebrate you and say thank you for all the wonderful work that you're doing in the music industry, in the coaching industry, the healing industry, the everything industry that you are.
Oh, thank you.
And, you know, for helping others to go out there and bring themselves into alignment and find that balance between what's going on the outside and what's going on in the inside. We need a lot more people like us out there doing the work that we do. So I really want to honor you, sister, and say thank you for so all that you do. Please tell my listeners where they can find you online.
Okay. My website is michelleescoffery.com.
Great.
And Instagram is Michelle Escoffery.
All pretty
straightforward. And I believe Facebook is the same, Michelle Escoffery. So.
Well, I will definitely have some links to go along with this episode. But we can find you online and see all the yummy stuff that you're up to and things like that. So I'm really excited. And so my final question that I'd like to ask you, Michelle, is what is your soulful sound to the world? So this is a self-prayer or desire that you wish upon the world.
I think I've been thinking about this quite a lot.
Right. Awesome.
So I think it comes back down to the breath. So my sound is literally the breath, the inhale and the exhale. And my desire for the world is that we all find our inner peace, and we all recognize the divine within ourselves and each other, because that's when we can start to have the more unity consciousness and understanding that what we do affects each other, even on the other side of the globe. It affects each other because we're all interconnected. Yes. So I think that would be my thing.
I love the sound. Breathe in and out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please feel free to share it with your friends and remember to subscribe. From my heart to yours, sending you love, healing, and sound wherever you are.